The 1950s are often romanticized as an idyllic and prosperous era, but behind that perfect picture lay a world full of complex changes and underlying tensions. Join us as we delve into each aspect to see what American life was truly like back then, from the economic boom to social pressures and the seeds of major change. Economic boom and the suburban dream. The 1950s truly marked a golden age of economic prosperity in the United States. After World War II concluded, a wave of optimism swept across the nation, with Americans full of faith in a peaceful and prosperous future. This very belief set the stage for a unique demographic phenomenon: the baby boom. Throughout this decade, an average of about 4 million babies were born each year, a testament to the nation's strong post-war revival and development. The American economy rapidly and effectively adjusted from wartime to peacetime. During many years of war, consumer demand had been suppressed, and now, with millions of dollars saved during the war, people flocked to spend. They bought essentials like cars, new home appliances, and especially houses. This surge boosted the U.S. gross national product, GNP, to more than double, from $200 billion to over $500 billion between 1945 and 1960 alone. This period is considered the golden age of American capitalism, an era of sustained economic growth and widespread prosperity. For a clearer look at the financial lives of Americans back then, let's consider income levels and living costs. At the start of the 1950s, the average annual salary was $3,210. This figure significantly increased to $5,010 by 1959, indicating strong growth in personal income that helped many families achieve a higher standard of living. As for the minimum wage, it was set at 75 cents per hour. Meanwhile, a factory job, which was the backbone of the industrial economy at the time, could bring in a higher wage, around $1.50 per hour, reflecting stable and abundant job opportunities. Essential costs were also quite affordable relative to income, making property ownership more accessible. A new home, the symbol of the American dream back then, ranged from $8,000 to $12,000, becoming a more attainable goal for many families. For transportation, a new car averaged between $1,500 and $2,000, allowing more people to own their own vehicles for convenient travel. And perhaps most surprisingly, a gallon of gasoline cost only about 30 cents, a very low expense compared to today, encouraging car usage and the development of suburban living. Even everyday essential food items like a dozen eggs or a pound of coffee could be bought for about 79 cents, and a gallon of milk for about 90 cents. These figures illustrate a period where owning property and enjoying living conveniences became easier for many American families, contributing to the development of a consumer society. This economic prosperity wasn't just about numbers. It also fueled a powerful wave of urbanization, particularly the remarkable growth of suburban areas. Real estate developers played a pivotal role in this process, meeting the soaring demand for housing. A prime example is William Leavitt, a name that became synonymous with suburban development. He purchased land in suburban areas and applied mass production techniques to build thousands of homes, much like cars on an assembly line. These homes were often affordable and quite similar in design, sometimes affectionately called little boxes, but they met the urgent housing needs of young families. These suburban homes were designed to fit the ideal family life of the era, emphasizing space and convenience. They often featured intimate family rooms, open living spaces, and spacious backyards, perfect for young families with small children amidst the baby boom. These very characteristics transformed the suburbs into the symbol of ideal family life in the 1950s, a place where children had room to play and families could gather. Another crucial factor driving suburban home purchases was the GI Bill. This act subsidized low-cost mortgages for many veterans, often making it cheaper to buy a home in the suburbs than to rent an apartment in the city, creating opportunities for millions to become homeowners. Many factors propelled this massive migration to the suburbs, which can be divided into pull factors and push factors. Regarding pull factors, many families viewed the suburbs as cleaner, safer, and offering a more fulfilling life. Americans had long had an anti-city bias, seeing urban areas as noisy, crowded, and prone to social issues. The suburbs were perceived as a nostalgic return to the rural experiences of many, providing ample space, privacy, and proximity to nature. Crucially, the suburban environment was also considered highly beneficial for raising children, a top priority for families during the baby boom, with better schools and a lower-risk environment. Government policies also played an indispensable role in encouraging suburban development, turning the dream of homeownership into a reality. Agencies like the FHA, Federal Housing Administration, and VA, Veterans Administration, provided easy mortgages, helping millions of Americans own suburban homes without excessive financial hardship. Simultaneously, large-scale highway construction programs were implemented, making commutes from the suburbs to job centers and shopping areas much more convenient, connecting suburban communities with urban centers. Furthermore, federal tax policy offered incentives for home ownership through deductions for mortgage interest and property taxes, making buying a home even more financially attractive. On the other hand, push factors from the cities drove residents to leave in search of a better life. These included declining job opportunities in major cities, deteriorating urban service quality, failing public schools, rising crime rates, and increasing local taxes. Another notable push factor, particularly for white residents migrating to the suburbs, was the increasing non-white population in central cities. While racial factors weren't the sole cause, they certainly contributed to this wave of suburbanization, creating significant demographic segregation between urban and suburban areas. Do you remember the feeling of your family first moving to the suburbs, or stories of relatives who found their American dream there? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Pop culture and entertainment. The 1950s truly marked an explosion of pop culture and entertainment, with the rise of new forms that significantly shaped American lifestyles. At the heart of this transformation was television, a new and powerful medium that changed how people consumed information and entertainment. The growth of television during this decade was incredibly impressive. At the beginning of the 1950s, only 9% of American households owned a TV, a very modest figure. However, by 1955, this number had surged to 64.5%, and by the end of the decade, specifically 1959, the rate had jumped to 90%. This rapid growth transformed television into the leading source of information and entertainment, completely replacing radio and becoming an indispensable part of every household. The golden age of television was marked by family shows that most Americans knew and loved, reflecting the social values of the time. These programs included classics like I Love Lucy, the decade's most popular show, starring the legendary duo Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, bringing laughter and entertainment to millions. Other shows like Leave It to Beaver, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, and The Honeymooners were also highly favored, often depicting an ideal image of American family life in the suburbs, reinforcing conservative values and dominant social norms. Most 1950s television shows targeted middle-aged male audiences, making the Western genre very popular with its stories of heroes and justice. Shows such as Gunsmoke, The Rifleman, and The Lone Ranger are prime examples of this popularity, attracting large audiences. Meanwhile, children also had their own entertainment, including Captain Kangaroo, Howdy Doody, The Mickey Mouse Club, and The Adventures of Superman, creating a colorful childhood for the baby boom generation. The film industry also underwent significant changes due to fierce competition from TV, forcing them to innovate to survive. To stay afloat and lure audiences away from their comfy sofas, Hollywood had to produce more spectacular, impressive films, screened on wide screens, offering an experience TV couldn't match. New trends emerged to enhance the viewing experience and attract audiences. For example, the 3D film trend became popular from 1952 to 1954, providing a realistic and novel sensation for viewers, albeit a short-lived fad. Later, drive-in theaters became incredibly popular, where audiences could comfortably watch movies from their cars on a large screen, creating a unique and private entertainment experience, especially favored by young people. The decade's famous films included classics and high-grossing works, becoming an unforgettable part of cinema history. The Ten Commandments was the highest-grossing film of the decade, showcasing the appeal of the epic genre. Other works like Ben-Hur, Vertigo, and Rear Window by legendary director Alfred Hitchcock were also beloved and critically acclaimed films. Film stars became global cultural icons, influencing fashion and lifestyles. Marilyn Monroe with films like The 7-Year Itch and Some Like It Hot, along with James Dean in Giant, East of Eden, and Rebel Without a Cause, defined the star image of the time, symbolizing glamour and rebellion. Marlon Brando, Audrey Hepburn, and Elizabeth Taylor were also big names, drawing millions of American audiences to theaters and leaving a deep impression. The animation industry was not to be outdone, with animated films like Lady and the Tramp, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, and Peter Pan among the highest-grossing films, captivating both children and adults. Sports were also an indispensable part of daily life and entertainment for Americans in the 1950s, attracting significant public interest. Over 15 million Major League Baseball tickets were sold almost every year during the decade, demonstrating the passionate love for America's pastime and its importance in entertainment culture. The National Football League, NFL, also produced many outstanding players, attracting a large fan base and becoming increasingly popular. Boxing was one of the most popular sports, with classic matches capturing nationwide attention and creating legends. Even the nascent National Basketball Association, NBA, had memorable players, laying the groundwork for its tremendous growth later, though it hadn't reached its current stature yet. In music, the 1950s saw the birth and explosion of rock and roll, the decade's most popular music trend, beloved by teenagers and seen as their generation's anthem. With its novel rhythms and energetic performance style, rock and roll sparked a revolution in music. Elvis Presley, dubbed the King of Rock and Roll, had an incredible career with 12 chart-topping songs during the decade, defining a new musical era and completely changing the musical landscape, from how people listened to how artists performed. Besides the main forms of entertainment, the 50s also featured other very distinctive trends and fads, reflecting shifts in culture and taste. Boys often wore coonskin caps to emulate Davy Crockett, a legendary character and subject of a very popular TV show, creating a children's fashion craze. Girls, meanwhile, loved wearing knee-length poodle skirts and short white bobby socks, creating a youthful and charming fashion style highly characteristic of the period. A globally famous toy, the hula hoop, debuted in 1958 and sold an astonishing 25 million units in just its first 4 months, showing the appeal of simple yet addictive fads and the widespread reach of pop culture. Do you remember any TV shows, songs, or toys from the 50s? Is there anything special you think only those who lived through that era truly understand? Share your memories in the comments below. Traditional gender roles and social pressures. After the massive upheavals of World War II, when millions of American women had to step into traditionally male labor positions to maintain the economy and support the war effort, the 1950s saw a strong return to traditional gender roles. Society longed to return to normalcy and post-war stability, and this was clearly reflected in the family structure. The nuclear family, consisting of parents and children, became the crucial unit and was considered the stable foundation of American society. In this ideal model, each member's role was clearly defined. The husband typically went to work daily to earn money for the family, acting as the economic pillar, while the wife was expected to stay home to care for the family, manage household chores, and raise the children. This led to immense social pressure surrounding marriage, especially for women, making marriage an indispensable life goal. Marriage was considered the most important goal in every woman's life, the only path to happiness and fulfillment. Statistics show that the average age for men to marry was about 23, and for women about 20, reflecting the trend of early marriage during this period. The divorce rate in this decade was quite low. Only about 20 to 25% of marriages ended in divorce, indicating stability in family structures, or at least the pressure to maintain them to avoid social stigma. In 1955, an astonishingly low less than 10% of Americans believed they could be happy unmarried. This meant that 90% of the population considered marriage the main key to happiness, creating a nearly universal social expectation that shaped many people's life choices. As a result, marriage rates soared, In 1950, 60% of girls aged 18 to 24 were married, and this number rose to 81% by 1950-1960. Women also married younger, with half of all women marrying in their teens by the late 1950s, demonstrating the powerful influence of social stereotypes. Advertising and media played an incredibly powerful role in shaping and reinforcing the ideal image of women in American society at the time, contributing to rigid stereotypes. The most popular magazines like Saturday Evening Post, Life, Good Housekeeping, and Ladies' Home Journal were filled with ads limiting women's roles to two main archetypes: the wife and the mother. Images of single women or those pursuing separate careers were extremely rare, or only appeared as a temporary phase before they settled down into family life. The qualities of an ideal wife were clearly emphasized in advertisements, creating a detailed list of expectations every woman had to meet. The wife had to be enthusiastic about housework, serving her husband with warmth and happiness. Homemaking wasn't just a duty but a joy, an art the wife had to master, showcasing her devotion. There was a subtle pressure for the wife to ensure her family kept up with the Joneses in terms of social status. This included maintaining the appearance of her husband and children, as well as owning the latest home appliances to demonstrate the family's prosperity and success. Even while doing housework, the wife had to look glamorous and perfect. Ads often depicted women doing 4 jobs in one, from chef, nurse, driver, to maid. But the final image was always a beautiful wife in evening gowns or neat clothes with tidy hair, showing no signs of fatigue or stress. This created an unrealistic image and immense pressure on women, forcing them to maintain perfection in appearance and roles simultaneously. The wife was encouraged to fully understand and support all of her husband's decisions, especially those related to the family's economic advancement. There was even a Good Wife certificate from New York University for wives who supported their husbands in pursuing education, provided the wife was silent when necessary and never spoke of her husband's failures or flaws. This illustrates the expectation of a supportive, passive, and unspoken role for the wife within the family and society. Besides the wife's role, the image of the ideal mother was also constructed with specific qualities, placing heavy responsibility for raising and caring for children on women's shoulders. The mother had to sacrifice her personal needs, including sleep, entertainment, or non-family hobbies, to wholeheartedly raise her children. The family's approval and happiness were considered the most important rewards for the sacrifice, the mother's sole source of motivation. The mother was responsible for ensuring the family received proper nutrition, developed well, cared for children when sick, and oversaw their academic success and appearance. The children's health, education, and neatness all reflected the mother's competence and dedication. Although this was a period of high consumption, mothers were still encouraged to spend sparingly to manage household finances. Do-it-yourself projects and canned foods became popular, helping housewives manage their family budgets more effectively and demonstrate their resourcefulness. Advertisements also emphasized training young girls from an early age to prepare them for future roles as wives and mothers, shaping their mindsets from childhood. For instance, Colgate toothpaste ads showed a young girl failing to find a partner due to bad breath, and after using Colgate, she immediately had many dates or even became a Mrs. This sent the message that appearance and personal grooming were the keys to achieving marital goals rather than intellect or individual ability. Magazine covers like Saturday Evening Post also clearly illustrated young girls studying, not for intellectual development, but primarily to prepare for married and family life. Even home economics classes in schools were stressed as necessary for girls to learn wifely and motherly skills, further reinforcing their predefined societal roles. Although the ideal woman was portrayed this way in reality, there was deep dissatisfaction among many women who felt trapped in these rigid roles. There were some exceptions, such as women working outside the home, often as actresses, secretaries, or flight attendants, but advertisements still depicted them as young, attractive women waiting for their future husbands to take them home. Even while working, they still had to maintain their femininity and prioritize family, showing that societal expectations remained very heavy. Famous childcare experts like Dr. Benjamin Spock also criticized working mothers, claiming they might cause their children to be neglected and poorly adjusted. This further increased pressure on women to choose between career and family, making many feel guilty if they wish to pursue a career. These social expectations and advertisements caused deep dissatisfaction among many women, a sense of emptiness and lack of purpose they couldn't name. Betty Friedan, with her controversial and groundbreaking book The Feminine Mystique, published in 1963, precisely exposed the unhappiness and emptiness many housewives felt. She argued that the suburbs, with their idealized image of happy families, had buried women alive, stripping them of their identity and personal aspirations. Statistics from 1955 magazines showed that 90% of ads featuring women in men's magazines and 76 to 84% in women's magazines depicted women in domestic roles, highlighting the dominance of this image. This simmering dissatisfaction, articulated by Friedan, became a crucial foundation for the powerful resurgence of the feminist movement in the 1960s, marking a major turning point in American social history. Do these images of 1950s women feel familiar to you? Do those expectations still exist in society today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The specter of the Cold War and McCarthyism. The 1950s weren't just a time of prosperity and ideal family images. They were also overshadowed by the specter of the Cold War and the rise of McCarthyism. These factors created an atmosphere of fear, suspicion, and significant conformity within American society, impacting every aspect of life from politics to culture. After World War II, the temporary alliance between the United States and the Soviet Union, formed to fight the Axis powers, quickly dissolved. Instead, a fierce economic and military confrontation emerged between two irreconcilable ways of life: Western capitalism and democracy versus Eastern socialism and communism. This was a decade-long ideological and power struggle that shaped international relations in American society alike. This tension peaked in 1950 when the Korean War erupted, escalating the confrontation from theoretical to armed conflict. The United States intervened on the Korean peninsula with the official reason of containing the spread of communism. Although war was never officially declared, this conflict was seen as a proxy war between two superpowers, the US representing capitalism and the Soviet Union, along with China, representing communism, vying for geopolitical influence. The consequences of the war were tragic, causing approximately 2.5 million deaths. Among these were about 140,000 casualties and 40,000 American fatalities, a heavy price for this undeclared war. This war not only consumed resources but also reinforced the fear of communism in the hearts of Americans, making them even more vigilant against the Red threat. Domestically, the fear of communist infiltration led to a phenomenon known as the Red Scare. This was a large-scale witch hunt, targeting individuals accused of being communists or having communist sympathies, regardless of concrete evidence. The central figure of this movement was Senator Joseph McCarthy of Wisconsin. He became infamous for his sensational accusations and for instilling fear that communists had infiltrated various levels of the U.S. government, from the State Department to the military. McCarthy even claimed to have evidence of hundreds of known communists working in the State Department, causing widespread panic and suspicion. McCarthy's accusations, along with the passage of the McCarran Act in 1950, requiring tighter controls on communist organizations, escalated the domestic Cold War tensions to an unprecedented level, creating an atmosphere of fear and mutual distrust. A crucial tool in the Red Scare campaign was the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. HUAC was established in the 1930s with the initial purpose of combating fascism, but in the 1950s it was tasked with investigating allegations of communist agents threatening American democracy from within, focusing on cultural and entertainment sectors. Hollywood was HUAC's first prominent target, as they believed the film industry had a significant influence on public opinion. The committee's investigators accused screenwriters, producers, directors, and even actors of poisoning American films with communist propaganda and conspiring to overthrow the U.S. government. This campaign not only targeted suspected communists, but also fueled underlying anti-Semitism, as many in the film industry were Jewish. HUAC's hearings led to the creation of the Hollywood Blacklist. This list prevented approximately 400 individuals from working in the film industry throughout the 1950s, destroying the careers, reputations, and lives of many talented people. 10 of them, known as the Hollywood 10, were convicted of contempt of Congress and imprisoned for refusing to answer questions about their Communist Party membership, demonstrating the government's harsh stance. Fear and boycotts eroded the quality of Hollywood films, making directors hesitant to make controversial films and self-censoring to avoid suspicion and blacklisting. Ultimately, McCarthy was censured by the Senate in December 1954, marking the end of the McCarthyism era, but its scars remained in American society. The fear of communism didn't just affect policy and the film industry, it permeated pop culture, shaping how Americans thought and acted. Popular radio programs, comic books, and novels all carried anti-communist themes, constantly reminding the public of the threat. This tense atmosphere strongly reinforced conformity within society. To maintain normalcy and cope with the world's tumultuous issues, popular culture promoted the idea that people had to adhere to certain safe ideals and participate in American prosperity by practicing consumerism. Even homeownership was closely linked to patriotism, creating a subtle pressure for everyone to buy a house. William J. Levitt, the famous suburban developer, declared that no man who owns a house and land can be a communist. This statement emphasized the connection between private property ownership and national loyalty, turning home buying into a patriotic act. Purchasing essential goods like TVs and cars wasn't just about convenient living, but also a way to avoid suspicion of political loyalty, to demonstrate that you were a good American citizen and conformed to societal values. Thus, consumerism wasn't merely about convenience, but also a form of patriotic expression amidst the intense Cold War. Speaking of these Cold War stories, do you remember any tales from that era? Or did anyone in your family live through this tumultuous period? Let us know in the comments below. Seeds of change, civil rights movement, and counterculture. Although the 1950s are described as a period of prosperity and conformity, they were also a decade of major conflict and the seeds of inequality. Behind the seemingly peaceful facade of American society were underlying tensions, particularly concerning civil rights issues, problems that had been suppressed for centuries but were now beginning to erupt powerfully. The civil rights movement began gaining significant momentum in this decade, laying a solid foundation for broader social reforms that would take strong hold in the 1960s. Although African Americans had fought against racial segregation for centuries, this struggle truly entered the mainstream of American life in the 1950s, attracting widespread national attention and forcing society to confront its injustices. A monumental turning point was the Supreme Court's ruling in Brown v. Board of Education in 1954. This historic decision declared that separate educational facilities for black children were inherently unequal, overturning the separate but equal principle that had stood since 1896 Plessy v. Ferguson case. This ruling paved the way for desegregation in U.S. public schools, starting in 1954. However, it's important to note that many white Southerners fiercely resisted this ruling, leading to intense confrontations and showing that the struggle was long and arduous. Another significant event occurred on December 1, 1955, marking a turning point in the civil rights struggle. Rosa Parks, a civil rights activist in Montgomery, Alabama, was arrested for refusing to give up her seat on a city bus to a white person. Her courageous and steadfast action, seemingly small yet profoundly meaningful, sparked the Montgomery bus boycott, a 381-day protest by black citizens demanding an end to discrimination on public transportation. The boycott only ended when bus companies finally conceded and ceased discrimination, marking a crucial victory for the civil rights movement and demonstrating the power of unity and nonviolence. In 1957, in Little Rock, Arkansas, a major challenge unfolded, showing the extent of resistance from those unwilling to change. 9 black students, known as the Little Rock Nine, attempted to enroll in Central High School, a previously all-white school. They faced obstruction from the state National Guard and a mob of yelling, threatening white individuals, creating a chaotic and terrifying scene. The situation became so tense that President Dwight D. Eisenhower had to intervene and order federal troops to escort the Little Rock Nine to and from their classes to protect their right to education. This event clearly demonstrated strong resistance to desegregation, but also the federal government's determination to enforce the law and protect civil rights. To legally strengthen the movement, on September 9, 1957, President Eisenhower signed the Civil Rights Act of 1957. This was the first major civil rights legislation since Reconstruction after the American Civil War, a significant milestone in restoring and protecting the rights of African Americans. This act allowed for federal prosecution of anyone attempting to prevent someone from voting and established a commission to investigate voter fraud, a crucial step forward in safeguarding the voting rights of African Americans, which had been disenfranchised for decades. Alongside the political civil rights movement, acts of dissent also emerged through youth culture and counterculture, signaling a shift in the ideas and values of a segment of society. The loud and energetic genre of rock and roll became a huge phenomenon, unsettling older generations and conservative factions. With its powerful rhythms, sometimes bold lyrics and energetic performances, rock and roll was seen as a symbol of rebellion and difference, breaking old musical norms. Stars like Elvis Presley, Chuck Berry, Buddy Holly, and Jerry Lee Lewis defined this new genre, attracting millions of teenagers and becoming icons for a generation. The television show American Bandstand played a significant role in introducing many new rock and roll artists to American audiences, turning them into national idols and helping popularize the genre. Additionally, the Beat generation challenged the conformist values of the 1950s through alternative lifestyles and provocative literary works. Authors like Allen Ginsberg with his poem Howl and Jack Kerouac with his famous novel On the Road captured the rebellious spirit of the era. They openly criticized materialism, blind conformity, and the superficiality of mainstream culture, seeking meaning in personal freedom and new experiences. This movement, by advocating for taboo behaviors such as drug use, conscious nonconformity, sexual liberation, and anti-materialistic values, strongly challenged the carefully nurtured social consensus of the decade. Adherents of this movement were often called beatniks and were viewed negatively by mainstream society, but they sowed the seeds for later cultural shifts. These dissenting voices, though sometimes negatively labeled, highlighted the underlying fissures in American society, showing that peace was merely superficial. They signaled larger, deeper, and more revolutionary changes to come in the 1960s, as social and countercultural movements would explode even more powerfully, reshaping America. Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends so you don't miss out on other fascinating stories. See you in our next video.